This is enteromorpha, which also grows in stagnant areas. The thing about the cordgrass is, I was asked once, Mr. Newman, what's the most important plant on earth? Well, they're all important, of course. You can't really identify it, but I picked this one, cordgrass. In fact, that was one of the chapters in the book, the most important plant. Because what cordgrass does is when it dies and decomposes, it forms a material called detritus, which supports all the commercial finfish and shellfish populations that we have, either directly or indirectly. From the tiny microscopic critters that are munching on it all the way up to the major species like we mentioned striped bass and others that ultimately depend upon this system as a food source. In addition, there also are barriers between the open water and upland property. So they're like shock absorbers for heavy wave action and storms that batter the coastline. They also protect our freshwater drinking water supply in Cape Cod. Marshes tend to be absorbent, so they prevent saltwater intrusion going into our single source aquifer that we have in the Cape. They're places too for things to actually live and carry out their life cycles. So they are extremely important to have, and they are protected species. But just to show you that that isn't always the case, Spartina alterniflora on the west coast is an invasive species. So they're having problems trying to control it in Washington and Oregon, whereas in Massachusetts it's protected. So it just depends on where these things grow. It's non-native out there, so it's a problem. But here it's important.
Is this what grows on the islands that come up in Barnstable Harbor?
The little hummocks. Yep, they're little islands. They get chunks of peat get dislodged from the marsh as you walk all along the Barnstable Marsh, and they float up. And if they survive, that's how more marshland forms. And sometimes they carry with it some populations of mussels and other critters as well, but that's what it is.
So they can live under, I mean, because like the islands go totally under the water at high tide.
This particular plant can survive inundation and salt water, and that's a good question. How can it do that? Why doesn't it plasmolyze? Why doesn't it lose water to the environment? And the answer is, we might be able to do a little experiment here, is that the leaves secrete salt. Now let's see if we can't prove that. We rub our finger along a blade of grass. Yeah, I can feel salt, I can taste salt crystals. You can actually see them a little bit. Go ahead, try that. So the plant would lose water to the environment because water goes from there of high concentration to a low concentration if it didn't get rid of the salt. Can you tell?
Oh yeah.
So it has the ability to secrete salt through its leaves. Also, they have to have some sort of atmosphere for their root system. So they have specialized cells called parenchyma that transport oxygen down to the roots and creates a little area around the roots called the rhizosphere, which allows them to survive in the anaerobic sediments. So this is a really important plant, and interesting one too. But that was a good question. You know, how can they survive in this salty environment? Remember, these are true plants. These are not seaweeds. Whereas the seaweeds, of course, you know, they don't need to worry about that.